You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 212, Getting Over an Ex While Co-Parenting. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, Breakup Coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful brave hearts. How is everyone doing? I am so excited. I have some special guests here. It's been a hot minute since I've done a podcast interview and had multiple brave hearts on at one time. One of my favorites that was like that was the brave hearts over 40 and getting over their ex in an age that is 40 and above. And it was such a fun episode. So I'm really excited to bring on two very special Bravehearts. There was actually supposed to be three, but one other one wasn't able to make it. But today I really think we need to talk about a very important thing called co-parenting. And how do we co-parent? And how can we do this in a way that aligns with everything you're learning on the podcast? These two are super special to me. They have a special place in my heart. After going through my miscarriage, I had a group of individuals that I was carrying through the Get Over Your Ex program and their breakups. And it was just like so special to me that both of you had babies and were experiencing kind of like the opposite almost of what I was experiencing. And it was just so fun to be able to be here for both of you through that and be a part of your journey and then seeing your kids' journey just very slightly, obviously. And so it was super fun for me. And you guys just both have a special place in my heart because of that. And yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. I'll have you guys go ahead and introduce yourself. Natalie, why don't you go first?
Awesome. So Natalie, I'm 33, a mom of two beautiful girls. So my older daughter is 8, and my younger daughter just recently turned 1. Fell onto your podcast in the process of this most recent breakup. And yeah, that's that.
Amazing. Thank you. Kyra, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, hello, and thank you, Dorothy, for inviting me. I'm very excited to share some of my insights. I am Kyra, and I'm originally from Switzerland, so that's why you hear a slight accent. But I've been living in the U.S. for the past 3 or so years, getting my PhD, and I have a beautiful daughter. She's now 10 months old, and yeah, I kind of happened to come across the podcast because my world had really kind of been rocked about 1.5 years ago. I lost my best friend in a tragic camping accident, and I became pregnant at the very same time. And so I kind of took that as the universe's way of saying, okay, I'm taking someone, but I'm also giving you someone. But then, about 3 months into the pregnancy, the relationship to my daughter's dad went southwards, and it was really rough because he also immediately started dating someone else, and we were living in this really small community and having the same social circles, and so I was pregnant with his child, and then in seeing them together and all that and hearing stories from other people was really hard. And so I was really looking for something to kind of deal with all these feelings and the partially also the isolation. So I was super excited to then find the podcast and then listen to binge listen to so many episodes until I was then kind of really signed up for the 5-day training, and then was okay, I need to do this because I'm not able to get out of this by myself, and I don't want to. And it's been such a really great experience. I'm a different human now, really.
You know what's crazy to me is that I love that you brought up the isolation piece because I didn't even think about that. I think about heartbreak being isolating, but also becoming a mother I'm assuming, and I'm just only speaking from my like I am not a mother, so I don't know. But what I've heard is that it can be isolating. It can also be kind of like jarring a little bit, and the fact of like, who are you outside of being a mom? It's almost like a whole new identity that you have to move into. So going through those two shifts together, I can only imagine is just like, whoa, wild.
Yeah, totally. And like just your lifestyle is so different too when you're like pregnant, right? You're not going out, you're not drinking, you're not doing all these things. So it's not like you can distract yourself so easily, which is also I guess what one of the things that I kind of wanted to share in case somebody else is like in a similar situation.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's almost like all of the buffers that you would normally have or be able to participate in are really gone. Alcohol, drugs, going out, like all of that are gone because you are pregnant at home. And I can only imagine too, at least for myself, I think back to like a really long time ago when I struggled with jealousy and like when my partner would go out, and I'm assuming and it was like your ex is going out and you know he's going out with other people and you are like literally physically stuck at home or doing things that wouldn't be what you would normally do in that situation. So there's no, you couldn't even react to your emotions. Wow.
No.
So wild. So wild. Well, that kind of leads me into, I guess, what I want to know what you struggled with most in your breakup journey. And so, Kyra, we can just continue off of your conversation. And Natalie, I want to know what kind of things did you really struggle with in your breakup journey, even outside of co-parenting. So, yeah, let me know.
Yeah, I think like the kind of acceptance piece was for me like really hard, and that like just to accept my reality and kind of yeah, this whole thought that just comes popping up back up, this kind of boomerang thought is like, this is not what I want. I don't want this. I hate this. Like I did not want to be a single mom. I did not want to do this alone. I did not want to go through my pregnancy alone. All of these things, and kind of not getting caught up by them is really like that's been like really difficult, and kind of how to overcome that. um and then also like kind of
Hold
yeah,
on,
like
before we move on, hold on. I want to know, okay, if that was something you really struggled, because this is huge. You like glossed through that as if it was nothing. And I'm like, this is huge though, because I know everyone listening is probably in the same state. Like they didn't want this. They didn't want this breakup. They didn't want this reality that they are currently living. But it's like, what else are you going to do other than accept it? We can't change it. Like there are some things that we can like maneuver and change, but a lot of times our mind goes to the place of what's the one thing I really want to change? And it's like I want to get my ex back or I want to make this better, right? And we then try to go out and try to change someone else or change even ourselves to fit into someone else's life so that we can have what it is that we want. So how did you find acceptance? How did you get to this place where I'm like, I am okay with this reality. I am okay being a single mom. I am okay having gone through pregnancy alone. I am okay with these. How did you get there?
I think I'm still working on some of the things. Like there's definitely some like past like resentment and like some yeah things that I'm still working through. But for the most part, I think like seeing that I'm able to create the reality that I want by myself or with someone else, that's been really helpful, and that's something that I learned in the program, and like kind of just being like reassured. Like I don't think like I did not know that, but I just didn't really see it that way. That I could create this, like that I am the the writer of my story, and it's not like somebody else that like I've had this really like victimized narrative about my breakup and just kind of about the situation that I was in. And I've been really kind of working hard on like changing that narrative and being like, okay, no, like, even though like right this very moment, this is probably not what I would have imagined to be in, but also there's all these like cool things about it that, like, I don't know, I get a lot of time with my daughter just by myself, and I don't have to share her with anyone in that point. So like it's really great. And I also like there's a lot of really other like cool elements, I guess. And so yeah, I don't know, like we get this image from like society that like, okay, there's this nuclear family and it has to be mom, dad, and children, and they all like live in the same house and yada yada yada. And it's so hard because like once you're not in that reality, you feel like you failed and you're like, oh my God, my life is just, a dumpster fire. I don't like this. This is not what it's supposed to be, and but then like once you kind of start to branch out and see other people's realities too, right? There are people that like um they have children by themselves by choice, because they're like, I don't want this. I don't want to share these, or I don't find the partner that I really can work with, or this is so much work. I mean, even if you're in a traditional family, there's so much like parenting is a whole new ball game. It's like it's so different from everything else you've ever done before. And so it's like regardless whether you're in a traditional relationship or in a more non-traditional form, there are disagreements, there are things that you're like, oh my God, I wouldn't do it this way, or I don't know, I really I'm not okay with all these thoughts and values that like the other side is instilling on my child. And it's like, well, I guess they're not, first of all, they're not your child alone. Like they have another parent. And then also like, even if they are your child, they're their own human. So like, it's been a really good kind of, I guess, crash course for me to also already like prepare myself for the future. Like as she grows older and kind of is going to get more input from other sides. She's going to school. She's at some point she's going to leave home, right? And she's going to go on her own journey, and like just kind of having already gone through the mental process of that, and just being like okay with, I don't know, like, yeah, I'm handing her to her dad and this is fine. It's not the end of me. Actually, it's pretty great because I get to spend time all by myself. I can do whatever I want in that time, and then I get her back, and I can get like enjoy my time with her. So like it's, I guess, kind of seeing these pros rather than kind of what I don't have. That's been huge, and I think it's a process you have to go through. It's not like happening like from one day to the next, but yeah, it's definitely worth it to go through that.
Oh, so good. Y'all, acceptance is your shortcut. Like every single time I find this to be true, whether it's in a breakup or not. Like that was a beautiful example of that, like learning all of the pros. It's like looking at all the things that I actually get to do. And I talk about this in your breakup. How many things do you get to do now because you are going through a breakup? What are all the things you actually get to look forward to now that you're going through a breakup or a divorce? There are so many people who are in miserable relationships who don't get the opportunities that you get because they're choosing to stay. And that's not good or bad or right or wrong, but it's like, oh my gosh, now I have this beautiful new beginning. And I either get to see it as that, or I get to see it as like the end of my life. And that's the reality you're going to create for yourself. And so I love the way that you said that around like, and it's wild. I saw you in the program doing this work, but I didn't put it all together until just now, because as we were about to get on this call, I was like, we're holding this call pretty early I say early in the morning. It's not early to you guys. It's 8 a.m. It is not early for normal people. But for me, I'm used to like waking up at 8 a.m. now. And this is why. This is why, though. This is so wild. After my miscarriage, I was like, what are all the things that are going to be really hard for me to do as a mom? And can I do them now to say I really like lived it up? Like, can I say that I really lived it up before I came? Because again, I was trying to find acceptance of my situation of not getting to be a mom. So I'm eating so much sushi, which granted you can do when you're a mom, but like not necessarily when you're pregnant. I eat sushi all the time, or like poke, raw fish, right? And I'm sleeping till 8 or like however long on the weekends until I want to, which I never do. I used to get up at like 4 or 5 a.m. and like make sure I'm up doing all the things. And I'm like more flexible with my schedule. And I just like look at my clients and my friends' lives who are moms. And I was like, what are the things that they're having a hard time doing? Can I really like live into doing those and like accept those and be excited about them, you know? So it's the same kind of thing that you're doing with, but in like the inverse of the opposite. And I just like love that so much because there will be a time, this is the crazy part, right? There will be a time where you are in a new relationship and you're going to mourn this version of yourself and the relationship that you had with your daughter and like everything that's going on right now. You will almost miss that and probably even romanticize it to the point where you're like, maybe I should not be in a relationship. You know what I mean? So good. Natalie, do you have anything to say or to add to that kind of topic?
About specifically acceptance,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, I think you know, I've gone through two versions of this now. I didn't really dig into my story, but like I wasn't with my daughter's dad when I got pregnant with my older daughter. So I had to navigate a similar journey that Kira's doing. But you know, I was a lot younger. I was in my mid-20s at that point. So like I had to learn to accept a lot of the similar stuff, like just it not looking how I thought it was supposed to look because of how like the narrative I had been given throughout life and like in my home life. You know, I was raised to have certain expectations of like, you don't do this before this, and you don't, you know, and so like doing something outside of those boundaries was like, oh my gosh, I'm a bad person. Like, I don't know how to do this, but like, I worked through that. And then also too, like, I'll be candid, you know, I had people in my ear being like, well, she's going to have a harder life because you're a single parent. And so I totally have related with Kyra this whole time because I think her situation feels really similar to how I felt then. And I really had to battle and like work through some of like that shame that I shouldn't have even had to have, but I did. And I know I worked with you through that. And, you know, it's not gone totally, but I think I've definitely accepted, like, in a great way, this doesn't have to look how everything looks for other people or what other people want. And yeah, maybe this wouldn't have been how I chose to have things happen, but like, I can either be mad about it or I can just like embrace it and love it and find the good in it, like with, you know, the co-parenting schedule and all that. With my most recent breakup with my younger daughter's dad, that's been a different type of acceptance because I think we were in a relationship and I really, you know, I still carry hope that things might work out. So just accepting what is and letting go of not only, oh, but I thought it was going to be this, but also like it was never that. like like accepting that it wasn't actually that. So it was like letting go of the fake version I let myself believe I might have been working towards, letting go of the dream version I had the whole time, and just being okay with reality and figuring out my next steps from there. So yes, acceptance is a huge part of, I think, getting through a breakup with a co-parent.
I love it. So good. Thank you so much, Natalie. And then Kyra, I interrupted you and you were going to go into your second. You had like a second thing that you were like, I struggled with this. So why don't you tie back to that? I would love to hear about that, and then we'll move on to Natalie.
Yeah, I guess like and we worked in the program on this, like having your ex or the parent of your child like there at all times while you're trying to get over them was incredibly hard. Like I just like, I mean, like you just get reminded all the time because also like you have a child together, right? So then even if you look at your child, they look a little bit like your ex-partner, and then it's like, okay, great, you know, like, and kind of having like I kind of like gone or did that mental shift from like, okay, she is like we were supposed to be a traditional romantic relationship unit, to like, it's okay that like she has a dad, that like a biological dad that is still involved, which is also like not everyone that is out there's situation. Like I've connected with some other single moms, and some of them really, really struggle with even having the father of their children involved. And that's a whole different set of struggles that I luckily don't have, right? And but like, yeah, having that person that you're trying to somehow like not cut out of your life, but like a little bit, like in a romantic way, at least in an emotional way, having them in your life all the time, and having to then also kind of like coming together and organizing things. And especially because my daughter is still so young, and like she requires a lot of attention and a lot of care. And so I have to come together with her dad and organize like who's going to take care of her when she's not in school or daycare yet. So like it's really just him and I. And so like, yeah, it requires of me this like grace, a little bit, to like really yeah, work with him and accept that like he is there, and he wants to be there, and he wants to be involved in her life, and that's great. But he's not there in the way that I was hoping he would be for me. Which, yeah, is another kind of aspect of the whole acceptance piece. But yeah, kind of, I really liked the way that you, Dorothy, talked about like kind of seeing this person, and you compared it to people that also like see their ex at their workplace or whatever, kind of like going to the gym, right? You're strengthening that muscle that is then like I'm still not 100% like what I would say like really kind of over the whole situation. I think I'm over him in terms of like the attachment and the desire, but I'm not quite in terms of the thoughts, the fantasies that I had about my future and about my life. And so, but every day when I like interact with him and I remind myself of all these things that like he's not, and that I don't want in a relationship, that like helps me to get closer to also kind of accepting and really being okay with what is, with reality, like Natalie had said before.
And I feel like, so we're restructuring the business right now. And what you just said really reminds me of this, because we're coming up with titles of things and like redoing pretty much everything. And one of the things that I feel like is very different about the Get Over Your Ex program is that I really want to help those people who also have to see and interact with their ex, just because I feel like the rest of the world kind of is like cut contact, go no contact. And then like, what are these people left to do? Like, why are we just cutting that huge group of individuals who have to either work with their ex or co-parent? What is that? That is not a real solution. Like I couldn't. And so I'm glad that you said that, because one of the biggest things is I was like, let's erase, I guess my ideal scenario is erasing that person from your memory. Like when I think about what is it that you guys want, right? What is it that you really want? And it's really to like erase this person from your mind. Stop constantly thinking about them, being consumed by them, making decisions based off of them, and really just being free of them emotionally, mentally, and physically, while also recognizing that I'm going to have to see them all the time. So I guess from your perspective, you just mentioned the analogy that we talked about in the program of going to the gym. And that's one of those that I really like because it is a practice, right? I say this all the time. You've got to decide to get over your ex, commit to that decision, and then practice that decision. And a part of that practice is you can't just say that you're going to be someone who runs marathons, or you can't just say that you're going to be someone who, is a weightlifter and then say that you've decided on that and you've committed on that. But if you're not showing up and going to the gym every day to practice, you're not going to get too far. So getting over your ex is the same thing. And I think that when you are someone who has to see your ex, whether that's co-parenting or working with this person, it gives you a lot of practice. Like that's one of the pros of that situation of like, you get a lot of practice having to put yourself in exposure with your trigger enough to get to the place of indifference. And once you get to that place of indifference, that's when you see the thoughts just go out the window because you're like, oh my God, I see and I interact with this thing so much. It kind of reminds me of if you were like a bug exterminator and you had this huge fear of bugs. Could you imagine? Like, you would definitely have to do exposure therapy. You would have to just sit in a room full of bugs and get so used to them to be able to do your job. Like, what? And this is your job. Like, you are in a reality right now where this is something you need to like figure out and work through to be able to co-parent in your best way. This is as important as your job, or at least that's the way I would see it if I was a co-parent with an ex. But I guess, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I agree 100%. Like that's definitely like and I think it goes into some of the other things I put in my notes in terms of like putting in that effort and like kind of getting over your ego and like yourself and like kind of being like, okay, like yes, this is not what I thought it would be. This is not what I wanted, but like how can I make this situation as beneficial as possible for like everyone involved? And the way I'm thinking about it is not just like everyone in terms of like my daughter and which like I put my daughter first, like probably almost every parent on this planet. But I also put myself first, and then also like I'm considering my other parent, right? Like I'm considering him too, because like if we as a unit are kind of balanced, then it benefits all of us. And so this is kind of like, yeah, even though it's been like a lot of work, like kind of doing this work for myself, like getting over or still seeing him while still working on like this other piece, which is like the parenting piece and figuring out what kind of values do we want, what kind of like other things. But the work, I think, and I'm hoping to like see that reflected in the future, and I can like, I don't know, touch back in a couple of years, I don't know, but yeah, that work will pay off. And like, yeah, for myself, it already like does in ways that like, because I have a good and amicable relationship with her dad, I get to do so much more things. Like it's so much easier. We don't like I'm about to go to Europe to attend a conference and I'm taking my daughter, and it wasn't like a huge argument about it. Like it was like, okay, yeah, like it sucks a little bit because I can't see her, but like I guess it's fine, so I get to have these kind of privileges a little bit. And so I think for anyone who's listening and is like, oh my God, like I want them to, I don't know, pay for this or whatever. Like there's something to be said about like going a route that is a little bit less confrontational.
Confrontational, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Sometimes I'm
No,
making words up.
I
But yeah.
make up words, and this is my first language, so it's fine.
So yeah, so like I think it just and Natalie has actually shared with me some of her stories. So I don't want to like put words in her mouth, but I want to have her share some of that too, because she did a
Yeah.
really great job her older daughter.
Yeah. Why don't you tell us your kind of perspective of this, Natalie? I would love to like hear in terms of co-parenting, what have been your biggest struggles? How did you overcome them? Any tangible tools you want to help like provide people perspective shifts? I would love to know.
Yeah. Yeah, this has just been such a pleasure having like Kyra and like somebody else going through something similar. And I don't know, because you feel really lonely sometimes. And I think as best as your support network can be there for you, like I don't really have a lot of people in my space that can support me the way somebody else that understands can. Um, so yeah, I think for me, when I think about this breakup, like the challenge for me was like I did have a lot of attachment. So detaching from, like I said, like ideas of what was or what wasn't in my head. But then also like accepting that detaching in the circumstance didn't, and like getting over him didn't mean what I thought it was going to mean when I started the program. I think I had this vision of like, it's going to be sunshine and rainbows and like life is going to be like I'm floating on a cloud. And it's like, no, that's not what I got. And, but I got a great thing, which was realizing, hey, it's okay to have a lot of the duality in the right, like, like in this situation, I have to interact. I still care about him. I have a responsibility to my daughters, both of them. And so how do I like juggle those things well and take care of myself? Um, so I did a lot to work on like the detachment stuff, but that was really hard for me because I thought hearing that at the beginning that it was going to mean I had to like bye, like let him go like totally and like boot him out of my life. And like that's not actually what I had to do to get to a place where I was like okay with whatever the outcome was. So I'm just
Oh my
laughing
God. Can
because
we
it was
just emphasize that? Because can we emphasize that? Because I do want, like, your life will always be that 50-50, that duality. Like, it will always be like that. And instead of getting to this place where you're happy all of the time, which is literally impossible. And if it isn't impossible, someone like let me know. And I would like the pill or the drug that gets me there. But it's learning how to be really comfortable in the duality, right? And like getting to this place of like knowing yourself well enough that you're good even in the face of duality. Um, and even dropping the duality at some point, like when we think about like extremes of letting go. I mean, I say this all the time, letting go of the good or bad or the right or wrong. And that doesn't mean I don't still experience a 50-50, but I don't also believe in there's right or wrong or good or bad. I just feel like there's so much gray, and I would rather live in a gray world than a black and white world. Um, so I'm glad that you talked about that. And then you also brought up the attachment piece, which I think is really important is, oh, I mean, actually, I just won't even go into that because I could talk about it for hours. So you continue. Thank you.
uh, yeah, I think I was very attached. And I think like it's funny because even this week I started like listening to Codependent No More, and I'm like, oh my God, my world is rocked. Like this is at the core. And I know in the coaching thread, that long thread from this week that you were like, oh girl, it's a lot of codependency. And so like I recognized I had some of those tendencies, but it was making me just like want to squeeze on for dear life. And it was scary to be like, but what happens if I let go? Like, how far is the drop? Is it just like actually a baby jump, or is it like my stomach's gonna be dropping for a while? So yeah, that was the scary part. But the second I joined the program and just like started taking the steps, I think that it just was like everything's gonna be okay. It's all good. One thing I did want to say is like, so it's not only just like co-parenting, but it's parenting through it too. And I think that that was for me where I was trying to be really mindful of pouring energy into. So I would say that that was an area I felt a lot of duality of feelings, right? Because, my daughter's turned one during the program. She started crawling during the program. She started walking. Like it's a lot of big milestones that are joyous. So I felt so much joy and then terribly deep grief all at the same time. And like, how do you show up the best you can. So like one of the measures I worked on through the program was presence. And that was a huge game changer for me because I you can't think about how present you are and not catch yourself faster and faster and faster every time. So like I think that was essential in my case of like keeping me present in all of the areas of my life that still needed attention, including myself, even though, my history would have been like, I just want to go into the depths of despair and go hide in a cave and like just sit with this terrible energy. So that kept me snapped out of it. So I think that's just something to keep in mind for anybody going through a breakup with kids is like, if you just try to be present, you will help yourself a lot more than you realize.
Didn't you give us a quote recently? Was it you that gave us a quote in the call, like even just yesterday, about keep your head where your feet are?
One of the things I was using as kind of a mantra was like the Gabby Bernstein says, like, be here now. Like, I don't know why that I was able to just fixate on that and just like pull myself out of moments more easily when I, uh, you know, was wanting to go down the path of like unhelpful thoughts and like just thoughts that weren't serving me. So, um, so for co-parenting, I think the other thing I would say is a challenge is just navigating new boundaries around communication. So like, especially when you're in the process of still being attached to someone, like you want to hear from them, you want to talk to them, you want to engage with them. But like, I think for me, it helped to just pull back a bit and really take care of myself and make the time for myself, because that kind of gave me a little bit of a protection almost with that. And to be honest, like we have, I drop my daughter off at daycare, she's picked up by him. So like I actually don't have to physically see him frequently. But I want to, you know what I mean? Like I still care about him. So just figuring out what works for you with like communication and those boundaries. And I know I told Kyra, but I think one thing I did well with my older daughter was, but now after dating somebody with a child as well, I think I did a pretty good job of having a vision of how I wanted her life to look, and creating that. But I also do wish I would have thought a little bit more about, okay, how do I create my reality here, knowing that I probably will date somebody in the future and I don't know what to expect of their opinions about how things go or what their preferences will be, and finding a way to keep it, I guess, a little bit like keeping it flexible so that there's no dramatic like I'm cutting this thing off that we used to do every week or something like that. That is, I think, something to think about when you're co-parenting and dating or thinking about dating.
Yeah, and I think that even goes, Kira, I just saw your hand, so definitely we'll bring you in just a second. I think it goes even too with like the people pleasing stuff that we've talked about of like some of these things are like, this is how I want to raise my child. And so if you come into my world, I'm not going to people please around you, right? And that's easier said than done. I at least I feel that way. I feel like it's easier said than done. So I'm so glad that you're already like thinking about that. That's amazing. Kira, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I think I wanted to like reiterate some of what Natalie shared in terms of boundaries and creating that life, because something so we have talked ever since we graduated from the program, or at least I did. We talked a bunch of times on the phone, and one thing that she shared with me and that stuck with me, and I want to like other people know about too. It's just like um the boundaries and like setting them the way you want them. So it kind of goes along with this people pleasing, right? With we are in this like narrative, and then like, and I'm a recovering people pleaser myself too. It's like, oh, I want to have this all that like everyone is always happy, and and then to the detriment of myself, which is really not helping in the long run. And this is a long game, right? Like you will be co-parenting for a very long time, probably for the rest of your life, because you're always going to be a parent. And so this is like setting those boundaries and setting those expectations early is definitely something that like is really helpful and will pay off in the future, with everything or everyone involved, like new partners too, right? I know I have now a child and I'm going into the dating world with a child. So what are the expectations there, right? Like I am going to be upfront with everyone that I meet, and I'm like, hey, this is what I have and this is what I want. And if you're not okay with this, then you're not for me. And like same with like the other parent, right? Like being okay, saying this is what I expect, and these are the things that yeah, I definitely there's no way that we can that I'm not gonna bend here. Because if I will like if I'm squeezing myself into this box of somebody else's idea of their life, then I'm going to be miserable. And I'm not even in this relationship anymore, right? But I'm in a different relationship, in a co-parenting relationship, but it's still like, it's not going to be my life. So, yeah. So, like, really taking time for yourself and like sitting down and kind of planning your life or what you like, the framework of your life, what you want to have, and then going out and communicate that and kind of, yeah, like create that by doing that. I think that is one very important thing.
Yeah. And you need that space to be able to do it. Just like Natalie said, she had to give herself space. Even though she like wanted to see this person and wanted to interact with this person, you have to give yourself that space. And that doesn't mean it takes time. And I'm saying space, right? And you can do all of this at the same time. I think that's like so hard to remember, right? Like we can reduce attachment, we can co-parent, and we can have space to ourselves. To learn who we are and what we like and what we're doing. And all of that can happen cohesively at the same time. But I think our minds, our poor minds, just want it like to be very separate, like separate little boxes. And like, I'm in this box right now, and I'm in this box right now. And really in the real world, it's like all happening at the same time. So good. Natalie, was there anything else too when it comes to like co-parenting or any other struggles that you feel like you really overcame and would love to share?
Yeah, I think I guess I would just think through like what do you want? Like you asked in the monthly check-in this month, like what vibe do you want to embody? And I'm like, think about that for your co-parenting situation, right? Like, what do you want? Because I know Kyra and I have talked like what we envisioned that we want didn't exist in our immediate space. So like I had no examples of what I wanted. I had narratives of other people being like, you should do this, you should do that, and all these shitting things. But I was like, that doesn't feel like authentic to me. I want to be kind always. I want to be flexible. I want to like operate with integrity. I want to, empower the other person. I tend to be somebody who likes control and like enjoys having my hands in everything, but like you have to let go of that. Like if you're going to be co-parenting and your kids are getting like a great relationship with the other person. Like I know some situations aren't the same, but so like if you think about what do you want to embody as a co-parent, and then also like what reality do you want to provide your kids? Because there's some changes that I made with my older daughter of like, oh, I was creating this view of the world for her. And like I did pivot and adjust a bit when I met my more recent ex because it gave me more perspective on stuff. And like that's just how life is. So I think just being flexible, communicative, but like intentional. Because I think one thing I think I do pretty well is I have a good compass of like I am trying my best to communicate well. I'm trying my best to treat you with respect. I'm trying my best to like encourage a wonderful relationship for both people with our daughter. And so you can't, you can get pulled into directions you never meant to go if you don't think through that stuff, which I think is just like anything in life. So
I'm so glad you said that, Natalie, because here's the thing that I'm noticing is that some of you are pioneers in the fact that, like you just said, you don't, in your immediate reality, you don't have examples of what's on the menu. You have no idea. And the only examples on the menu that you're seeing is like shitty and terrible and even worse. And none of them look appetizing. And we're like, why are we sitting at this restaurant? Can we please go to a different restaurant? I need a different fucking menu. Right. And so you're making a menu. You are creating a new experience that hasn't been shown to you, which also means there's other human beings who are going through the same thing who haven't seen the options yet. And you guys get to be living examples of options that are amazing. Instead of terrible, miserable, and worse, you're like, oh, we can have exhilarated, awesome, and like badass. And they could also choose those. And it was kind of, I mean, and even Kyra, you mentioned a little bit about like there are people in the world who are choosing to have babies on their own and seeing that as like an empowering thing and an exciting thing. And it's the same thing for like both of your experiences of being a parent, regardless of with a new person, regardless of going through a breakup, regardless of being like after the breakup, building your bigger and better life. All of those things can be whatever experience you want. But just like Natalie said, you have to be intentional about it. You can't just let it happen to you and expect the world to create this amazing experience because the world isn't used to being amazing during times like that yet. Like the collective thoughts that most people have haven't caught up to what we're doing here, even just on this podcast. Right? So you guys are crafting new experiences. Like to me, it's almost like you're creating a new restaurant, number one. Another analogy is like you're going on this voyage. So of course we don't know like what's in front of us, but we get to decide how we see rocky waters there. We're going to learn how to soar through them in a different way. Like, I don't know. It's really neat to me to see that. And it's just like now hitting me as you said that, Natalie. So thank you for saying that. So good. Is there anything you guys wanted to add to that?
yeah, I don't know. I think we have so much available to us.
Yeah.
And I know that's a version of what you just said, but I just think so many people don't like you just take stuff at face value that other people hand you and you're like, wait a second, this wasn't these aren't my rocks. Like, where did I get these rocks? And I don't know. I think it's still a challenge, right? There's always new things, but I think if you can let go of any perceived notions you have of like what being a co-parent looks like, what being in a like split household looks like, what being successful at getting over your ex actually looks like. I don't know. It's powerful.
Yeah, totally. I agree with that. And I also just kind of wanted to say again for like because it was such a difficult experience for me, like going through like the pregnancy and the breakup at the same time and all that. And like, and I wish, like I would have had somebody to like talk about this that like Natalie mentioned too, is like in a similar situation or had gone through this and, would be able to be like, okay, like you're gonna be fine. Like it is really hard, but like there's also a lot of good that comes with it. And like I don't know, like if anyone is on this listening to this, like really know that like you're not alone. Like there's so many other people that are going through this and like and there is a community too there. Like if you look at the right places, there are people that like can help you through this. And even if like with this like the Braveheart community, like I've never met any of these people in person, right? I've only like ever talked to them on the phone or like see them on in the community or on the calls. But like even that, it gave me so much like reassurance and just help that made it possible for me to make these mental shifts and really like be the version that I am today, which I'm like really proud of. But yeah, like it took the like quote unquote the village that people are talking about when like they're talking about raising a child, right? So you do there is a village, and so like and it's available. That's
I also think that was a pleasure about the program that I wasn't certainly expecting was like, I have somebody in a similar situation that I can talk to now. And also, like, I don't know if it's normal for the cohorts, but our cohort is close. Like, we have our own little, like, WhatsApp group now, and like, we still keep in touch with each other. And I didn't realize that was going to be an outcome of it. And I'm really grateful because it was surprisingly, like I still am like, so you're dating, and I thought I'd have nothing to relate to in this call, and jokes on me because this and this are like so relatable. So yeah, I think the village thing is so true. I also one thing I did want to add was I think that something to keep in mind from the co-parenting situation, and sorry if this derails where she was going, but no one will ever love your kid the way your co-parent does. And like that makes me teary-eyed even to say, because I think that's if you can't hold on to like much, hold on to that. Like that person is the person that cares just as much as you do, hopefully, about your kid. And like that's a unique thing that not everyone has to offer. So I think that's what I care about, right? Like that's the thing I choose to focus on. So wanted to make sure.
Good. I love that. I love that. Amazing. And I guess if you guys have time still, I know we're about to go over. I would love to know what would you tell the version of you who's in the thick of it? Because I think that there are brave hearts listening who are in the thick of it that are the version of you from a while ago. And what would you tell him or her?
Take the leap. Like give yourself permission to feel your feelings. Give yourself permission to take some space to process however you can. Ideally, if you can like find a community or like a connection as an outlet, like that is very powerful, and don't underassume like what you can get from that. But I think it's so easy, especially like in the co-parenting space, to just like want to channel all of your energy towards your kids. And like you are so important, and you have to show up for yourself, because that's how you do show up for your kids, and that's how you do heal faster. And if you don't make the time and space to address whatever you need to do for yourself, um, that's where you're getting into a place of disadvantage, in my opinion. So I think it's easy to, like if you're interested in this stuff and you're thinking about joining the program, like I'm just going to say it. Like I think all of us have a tinge of like, I'm not sure about this, but I'm taking the leap. And like, I don't know anybody that didn't just insanely like get what they had wanted and expected, because you have that data accountability in the program too. So that's just huge, and I'm implementing that still like in my own ways. But yeah, make the time for yourself. Make yourself the priority, because everything is a season of life, and this season's really important and will determine how long you hold on to it.
So important. Go ahead, Kyra.
No, I want to like just add, to that. Make yourself a priority. I also had a really hard time, like when I was in the thick of it, feeling like guilty, that I would cry in front of my daughter, or just like have these really, really intense emotions. And it's okay. Like I would always rather choose to be my authentic self than to hide that from her, because that's also what I'm modeling, right? Like we're their biggest role model for a very long time. I think it's about till they turn 7 or so. Like you're the most important person in their life, and then still gonna be for hopefully forever, right? But it's just, yeah, it sometimes feels wrong to be so raw and like a mess and just not able to function because the emotions are so intense. But like, it's okay. It's okay to feel those emotions. It's okay to have those emotions. And that's the way of like getting through them. Because if you're bottling them up and just like putting them somewhere, they're gonna come up sometime. And that's gonna be like way uglier. So like, it's better to cry in front of your child and then tell them why you're crying, and kind of like, I mean, not you don't need to give them the whole lay down, but like, but show them that it's okay for them to show their emotions too, because that's a very important skill for them to have. And yeah, like they will benefit too.
So important. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I will just end with saying that as I've been doing like the coaching realm, one of my favorite things is the fact that everything we're learning, we're then also gifting our children. And even like the most simple, or maybe like the basics of the basics around feelings, thoughts create feelings, and how do you process an emotion, I think will change the world. Like, could you imagine a world where all of our children know how to process a feeling and allow it to release from their body immediately, instead of holding on to it forever, and knowing that the thoughts in their brain that are optional sentences are what's creating all of their emotional experiences? And I just think it's going to be a different world if we teach our children how to do that. So I think it's really amazing. And then one of the things too, it's kind of like you mentioned, it's almost like our old conditioning makes us believe that we can't process emotion in front of our kids. Whereas I'm like, why don't we process emotion with our kids? And I literally just had someone who was brushing their teeth, or I think they were helping their child brush their teeth, and she was getting frustrated and angry. And the night before, she had introduced them to bean bags, which is a Bella Lively thing. And I talk about it kind of as grief bubbles. But she was like, while she was brushing her teeth, she mentioned to her 5-year-old, I have a bean bag, or I'm processing emotions. And he thought it was funny, and he's giggling. She's processing the anger at the same time. And it's like this amazing, beautiful experience of like giggling funny with anger. And then all of a sudden it's gone, and we get to go to bed not angry and resentful. That's amazing. And then your kid just got it, like you said, modeled to them, of how they might be able to do that in the future. And I think it's beautiful. So thank you for saying that. Amazing. You guys, this is just a jam-packed episode of awesomeness. I'm obsessed. Like I said in the beginning, you two just have such a special place in my heart. I'm so honored to have been part of your journey, and I'm so proud of both of you. Literally epicness. I love it. Is there anything else that you want to say before we hop off?
I'm just grateful for the time. Thanks for letting us share.
Yes. Amazing. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course, where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.